Hey everyone, it's another episode of The Critical Reel with me, Zach, which means another movie to review and more film stuff to talk about. I've actually decided that from now on, each episode is going to come in two parts. Well, kind of. Yeah, it's going to come in two parts, whatever. The first half of the episode is going to focus on my week in film. So whatever happened to me in regards to film over the past week, what movies I watched that are not new releases. So older movies, perhaps, classic films that I have never seen before, childhood films that maybe I watched again for the first time in 15 years, stuff like that. Stuff like movie news that struck my fancy, movie trailers that I think are noteworthy. Anything that happened to me in film over the past week, I'm going to talk about in the first half of each episode. And then the second half of the episode will focus on the review. So whatever new release I watched that day for that episode will be covered in the second half of the episode. And today it's going to be Survivor, which is the latest film by James McTeigue. And I'll get to that a little later on. Another thing that I want to mention actually is now that I'm doing podcasting, these audio episodes, it gives me the freedom to loosen up on my rating system. Because when I did my written reviews on my website, I was kind of restricted by the system to only solid stars. I only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. But now that I'm kind of freed up by this whole podcasting thing, I'm actually going to include the half star, which I think is quite effective for me because, there's some films where they're not exactly 3 stars, but they're not good enough to be 4, or they're not good enough to be 5 stars. So the half star kind of comes in handy. And I think that will improve the equality and the I wouldn't say objectivity, because no review is ever truly objective, but it's going to improve the overall standard of my reviews. So yeah, that's something else I wanted to say, was that I'm going to include the half star from now on in my ratings. I also watched a couple of movie trailers this week. One of them was The Hateful Eight, the latest film from Quentin Tarantino, and the other one was Burnt, which doesn't have at this point an Australian release date. I don't know why, because Australia is being Australia. But it's a film that stars Bradley Cooper, and it's about him being a chef or something, and then he falls out of grace and gets imprisoned, I think. And then it's him coming out of prison and wanting to run the best restaurant in the world. And that's, I think, the gist of the whole film. It's his rise from parole to stardom in the culinary industry. And what I think my main takeaway from that trailer, if you haven't seen it yet, is the fact that it's structured in such a way where it doesn't look like it's going to be just a typical culinary quest, which I thought it was going to be, because how much action and how much drama can you have in a culinary film? So the trailer kind of structures it as part climb, part redemption, part action flick, because apparently there are some people out to get the Bradley Cooper character and stop him from running the best restaurant in the world. Why anyone would ever do that, I have no idea. But yeah, apparently that's going to be a thing in the film, according to the trailer. So was I impressed by the trailer? Not really, because I was kind of hoping that it would just be a straight up culinary experience where we're watching this guy come out from prison and he's trying to regain his dignity by converting his tainted life into a life of taste. I mean, yeah, no pun intended. And I thought it was just going to be about that. But Hollywood being Hollywood, they're trying to weave a whole bunch of drama and a whole bunch of action into what would otherwise be considered a very dull and monotonous story. And I think Hollywood tends to do that because Hollywood today, they don't really have the confidence in very quiet, subdued stories to capture audiences' attention. So they assume that audiences are going to want some kind of drama, some kind of betrayal, some kind of action to keep the story pumping forward. And yeah, that was just, I think it's just a disappointing approach. But you know what? That's just a trailer, and it's just the first trailer. We're going to see how the film goes if it does finally get an Australian release date, which I think it should, because I think the Guardian UK kind of signaled this film to be one of the films to look out for in the Oscar season. So if it doesn't get an Australian release date, it's going to be quite disappointing. And the other film trailer that I watched was the Hateful Eight, which is the 8th film from Quentin Tarantino. And the first thing I noticed was that the trailer itself is shot in a glorious 70mm CinemaScope format, which is kind of like an extreme widescreen, which was used in old films like Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments. So it's if you notice, it's really narrow, but it's wide. So it captures landscapes perfectly. It captures colors and detail in crisp glory. And the fact that the trailer is presented in this format is pretty impressive. Like, I thought that was a smart move to sort of capture that crowd, if you will. But then as I watched the trailer and I started noticing that all the costumes were fantastic and the landscape is fantastic and the shots are immaculate, and then Samuel L. Jackson comes on the screen and we're watching him in the wagon with Kurt Russell and the whole setup of the trailer is going on, I was waiting for like another actor to present himself to take over as the role of the lead guy in the film. Like, it didn't occur to me that Samuel L. Jackson was going to be the lead main character in the film, because to me, especially in Tarantino films, apart from Pulp Fiction, he's always been a very secondary presence, and I've kind of gotten comfortable to him being a secondary presence. I don't think I've seen very many films where Samuel L. Jackson has been in the lead, which, I don't know, it doesn't say very much for him, to be honest. I've never been a huge Jackson fan. So when I was watching the Hateful Eight trailer, I was enjoying it and I was watching all the performances unfold, and I was just waiting for someone else to show up and be the star, to kind of steal the scene and be like, yes, I'm the lead of this film. I mean, kind of like what Jamie Foxx and Leonardo DiCaprio did with Django Unchained. But it just never happened. So by the end of the trailer, I was still like, I wasn't convinced that Samuel L. Jackson was going to lead this film, and I don't know if that's a good thing, really, because I'm going to go into this film now expecting a lot from him, and if he doesn't deliver, I'm going to be disappointed, which is a bad thing. I shouldn't go into any film with expectations, but that was my main impression of the Hateful Eight trailer. Other than that, though, it looks pretty exciting. I'm quite keen for the film. I'm just hoping that it kind of detaches itself enough from Django Unchained so that we're not constantly drawing comparisons, which might very well be the case. And I think that wraps up the whole film news segment of this episode. I think I'm just going to jump right into the review, which is of Survivor, the latest film directed by James McTeague, who also directed V for Vendetta, which is a vastly superior film to this one in almost every way, because Survivor, even though it has a wide array of respectable and reputable actors like Pierce Brosnan and Mila Jovovich and Roger Rees and Dylan McDermott, is such a vacuous film that none of these actors are able to save it. I mean, honestly though, what is this film about? Okay, I'll tell you what the plot is. I will kind of just give you a brief rundown of what goes on in this film. So we've got Mila Jovovich, who plays Kate Abbott, and she's the new head of security at the US Embassy in London. And her role essentially is to be the Clarice Starling of this film, because she's this transfer from Washington DC, and she did a wonderful job in Washington. She was the top of her game, she was well respected, and now she's being transferred to London. And she's coming in on a high horse, and she's being all, we gotta stick to protocol, and we gotta do this, and we gotta, this guy is a red flag, and this guy is a danger, and this is So that's a character, and that's all she does. And on the other side of the coin, you've got these baddies who are caught in some nefarious scheme to do something, to blow up something. And what they do is they blow up a restaurant in London, and they try and pin the crime on Mila Jovovich's character. Why? I have no idea, but they do it anyway. And now Mila Jovovich is on the run. She's on the run from the British police. She's on the run from the US Embassy, who's trying to find her to prove her innocence. And she literally spends the whole film just running away and surviving what I recall to be like 5 explosions. How she survives so many explosions, I have no idea. And yeah, and she's being pursued by the Pierce Brosnan character who plays this assassin, which the characters in the film hail as one of the best assassins in the world, when actually he's one of the worst, because he can't shoot for nuts. And yeah, so he's pretty useless as an assassin, and he's chasing Milla Jovovich across town, and he pops up unexpectedly out of the blue when there's no way of finding her. He's there. I swear Pierce Brosnan, he's not so much playing an assassin as he is playing some kind of illusionist with an insane knowledge of the London infrastructure, because he knows exactly where to be at the right time, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. That's pretty much the gist of the plot. And the whole terror that's about to unfold is that Pierce Brosnan wants to blow up Times Square on New Year's Eve to devastate millions of New Yorkers. What is his motivation? I have no idea. What is his accomplice's motivation? I have no idea. So they're just villains kind of plopped into this plot to create some intrigue, I would think, with no real reason as to why they're doing it. And it just makes for a very kind of uneven, boring mishmash of elements that don't really amount to anything. I mean, the climactic fight between Milla Jovovich and Pierce Brosnan, which was inevitable, is so ridiculous and so preposterous and so fast and so pointless that it kind of just caps what the whole film is about. And this was directed by James McTeigue, who hasn't done very many films in his career, but he did V for Vendetta, which was such a smart, witty, insightful look into governments and how they control the people, and that the governments shouldn't be afraid of the people shouldn't be afraid of the governments should be afraid of the people. And that could have so easily transferred into Survivor, but it didn't, because I think there was just no room in the screenplay for this kind of ideology to pervade. The film is only 1 hour and 35 minutes, so it's a really short, sharp, crisp film. I mean, it's good. It doesn't test your patience, but it tests your intellect. It tests your ability to find intelligent stuff in films. And Survivor is not an intelligent film, because it's got just unbelievable characters and unbelievable situations in an uninspiring plot. And really, when the film is over, your first question will most probably be, what was this film about? Why was this film made? What did I see in this film that I haven't already seen in past better films directed by better filmmakers? And I think that is the most disappointing thing about Survivor, is that doesn't challenge us to be excited. It doesn't challenge us with anything new, with anything revolutionary. And I think it's all inherent in the issues of the plot, because in the issues of the screenplay, but because the screenplay doesn't begin with anything inspiring. Yeah, so I'm giving Survivor just 1.5 stars. See, I actually included the half star now. That's pretty impressive. I used it, and it worked for me. And also, I just found out today that Roger Rees, who plays one of the bad guys in the film, died like on the 10th of July this year, and I had no idea that he died, and I'm quite upset, because I really enjoyed him as the sheriff of Rottingham in Robin Hood Men in Tights, and I even enjoyed his performance in The Prestige. And it's quite sad now that he's passed. I had no idea until I was doing a bit of background check on the film and found out that he had actually died. So yeah, rather upsetting news for a rather upsetting film. What can I say? So this has been another episode of The Critical Reel. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, you know what buttons to click. See ya.